Hey, welcome to Feisty Chess. I'm going to sneak another game in today. Let's play e5 again against e4. I'm playing Ali 1956. Have I played this person before? No. Oh, that's a Viennese player. Great. Vienna game. I play knight f6, and after f4, the main move is d5. Now we can take on e4. Okay, this is a trap. It's a long-term trap where white gets a lot of initiative if I try this queen check. So the best move here is this. And then I believe d4 to prevent white from playing d4. Follow up with c5 and knight to c6. I could have taken this pawn, but white's wanting that. Pina colada. Delicious. Okay, bishop e7 is called for. Taking more control over g5 before we go for bishop e6. Okay, I think I want to take with the pawn. That gives me an isolated pawn, but it also gives black a weak e-pawn. Actually, if I take with the knight, there's no threat of recapture, because queen takes would lose black a rook. So I can take with the knight here, which will also net me the two bishops and keep my pawn structure better. So I think that outweighs this. And the e5 pawn is still going to be weak. I think bishop to b2 might have been a better move there for black. Okay, it looks like black will be getting d4 in, so let's grab the bishop pair. Well, I can go for bishop g4 here if I want to prevent d4. But he can easily get out of that pin. Where's my bishop going to want to be? c6? Let's just blockade this pawn for starters. Okay, and now our queen can come here. He's mainly trying to open up this diagonal. If he wants to take on c5, I wouldn't mind that. Would I? Maybe now is the time to castle kingside. The queen side looks pretty loose. I'm going to castle kingside. I've got my two bishops. How best to use them? I guess opening up the position. Takes with the pawn. Okay. Queen d5 looks like a powerful centralizing move. Then you can play knight to g5. Maybe the bishop wants to be on d5. That looks strong. Let's just take b5 away. He wants to trade off his bishop. Let's take control of g5 as well. Now white's pieces don't have a ton to do. There's sacrificial ideas on h6, I realize. Okay. Let's just put our rook on an open file. Okay. We got a bishop to f8, which will be a nice defender on the king side. And now our rook is maybe a little more useful on this e-file. Got a really good formation here built around this centralized bishop, which defends these points and attacks these points. White's really going for an attack, but he's just allowed me to skewer. I just want to make sure this is as good of a move as it looks. I don't see any big threats. Where does the queen go? I guess it goes to f5. And then it's threatening. Well, no, it wouldn't be threatening once I take that rook. So I think I can do this. All right, let's snap out the exchange. Queen looks very happy on c7 here. There's bishop sacrifice ideas on h6 now. while nothing guards f6. Queen c7 is still the best move. I might be able to just allow that bishop sacrifice, actually. Yeah, because my plan is... Let's see, queen c2. This just forces the queens off, actually. Does it? This also hits the bishop a second time, but that's immaterial, really. Okay. Let's go here. Now, taking the bishop looks a lot better because I can block checks with, say, queen to g6. So if he moves his queen somewhere, I guess he could go to f3, but then I've got queen g6 immediately. Does have a pawn. He just has a pawn for the exchange. Okay. Now he needs to move his bishop, I think. But I'll get my rook on the 7th. This has to be good for black. There's also rook c4. I do want to stop these pawns from simply marching. I don't see a good way to do that without giving back the exchange, honestly. Counterplay, I suppose. Throw a check in. Trading off a single pair of rooks, I think, is a good idea. And that might allow my king to get a little closer to stop these pawns as well. Let's do that. This rook's not stopping that pawn for the time being. Oh, he's just giving up a whole rook. Okay, well, caught a lucky break there. Let's analyze. Thanks for the game, Ali 1956. Let's analyze the obvious continuation of rook takes. I guess there's other continuations here. The computer really likes black despite these monster pawns. This bishop is holding this one back. This one can't advance because the bishop's got this one. So that's pretty key. I guess there's not much to stop me from getting my king over here. So what about... Am I in the analysis board here? Things kind of locked up. Oh. Okay, this is white to move. Okay, looking at this, king takes. Okay, the valuation makes more sense now, but it's still heavily in black's favor. A3 just to save that pawn, but then the bishop can just grab it easily. Let's look at something more sensible. Trying to keep the king boxed out with these squares. But then the bishop can just easily blockade. We're going to round up that a-pawn. So yeah. Easy win for black from here. So maybe this mistake wasn't that big of a deal. Keeping a rook on the board. If you're down in exchange, you want to keep your rook on the board. My rooks are can be redundant. And I don't have access to f2 immediately with this rook to double on the second rank because of this knight. So maybe this is a move that makes sense. Oh, it says a draw. Okay. Or this, perhaps? I think this makes more sense. We're going to push this pawn, which is the queening square is already guarded. And I guess the best I have is to just grab up the pawns I can. And then rook to e2, d7, bishop b6. We're holding this pawn back at least. c1. Doesn't this kind of diffuse everything? Bishop d1? No. Oh no. Bishop takes d8 and then he's got rook. So take, and then this kind of ends things. So not bishop d8 yet. How about king f7? What's the problem with this? Rook b1. Oh, now rook f1 check wins that back. King h7? King h2? a5, and black is ready to play rook c8. Of course. rook f7. I just have to give up the bishop. And this is better for white. I got 2 rooks for his 2 pieces. I've got an extra pawn. These pawns might prove dangerous. Actually, this is better for white technically, but I might prefer to be black in these conditions. If he ever moves this knight, I land a rook on f2. I guess he can play his rook here and try to get this thing rolling. Speaking of rolling, I go with a4. Knight to e3. Let's go with a3. e6. Keep the knight away from that pawn. Rook to a8. a2. I've got a really dicey situation here. I suppose if he goes like this, then we take here. That's not the way to do it. Rook takes e7. Then bishop takes. Then take here, and I get to keep this pawn because he needs to move the bishop out of the way. So I can come back to e2. Okay, and I might live on because of this advanced pawn. This bishop can take over guard duty. Anyway, getting really into the weeds. I think the point is, let's go to back to the beginning. I think the point is white actually had some initiative for that material sacrificed. Yeah, d4 is the main move here. Because we don't want to allow white to build up that big center with playing d4 themselves. Keep that bishop shut in. We're not really threatening to take this pawn. That pawn's not as important as this big center. So we build up a center of our own. Grab the bishop pair. Computer likes that, of course. It says we're up a pawn here. Bishop e6. I was considering bishop g4 here. Yeah, but queen e4 can kind of just neutralize that right out of the gate. So yeah, bishop's sturdier on e6. Plays knight to e2, bishop f4. d4 it doesn't like so much. Yeah, castle. Queen d5 here. Just giving up the bishop pair. Son of a gun, I keep doing that. Okay, taking was fine too. Queen d5 would actually give up the bishop pair, it seems. Takes, bishop takes. But we're getting a pawn, I suppose. That's the dividend on that. We're grabbing that c3 pawn. Okay. Didn't consider a queen move there. And c4 isn't possible because the queen and bishop back each other up here. I mean, it's possible, I suppose. And you have this, but we still got our bishop pair, and white's pawns are kind of shattered. Pawn structure, that is. All right. We took. This is all looking good. Rook c8 maybe would have made more sense. Just get a rook on the open file right away. I spent a lot of time making probably too passive of moves. Yeah, rook c8 looks good. I've got b7 under control. Queen b5 is not a thing to be worried about. But I kind of waste some time on a6. And now, yeah, rook to c8 is called for again. I get a little bit worried. I don't want to get off bishops. I'm a little too possessive of that bishop pair, I suppose. But actually, if the bishops get traded, rook c8. Let's look at this. Just let the bishops get traded, huh? Rook c4. If you want to take my bishop, I will be doubling rooks on the c file. You're helping me to do that by developing my queen. So that's no good for white. White's best idea is to double the rooks on the f file, of course. h6. Just kick that bishop. Looks a little bit scary because of this. Not gonna lie. But rook c6 gives the rook to the defense. Nice. Okay. Importance of a mobile rook. Importance of rook to c8, which I delayed for a long time. I did eventually play it, and I'm still okay here. Finally played rook to c8. Actually, I've got as big advantage as ever. Queen b6. Sensible move, getting the queen on the third rank. I suppose I could play a bishop out here if I want to trade off my bishop pair. This defensive plan wasn't the best. Ooh, and look at this. Now the sacrifice actually really works. What did white play here instead? His queen up. So yeah, we both missed some sacrificial themes. This f6 square is the point. So this is similar to kind of what when white was able to play bishop takes h6 in the game. Knight f6 check. Queen takes f6 is the best move. That's bananas. Now king h8. Queen d3. Who needs? Now I do have to play queen takes f6. Ugh. So yeah, glad I didn't. Well, not glad I made this move in particular. Bishop g5 would have made a lot more sense. But still, white comes out with an advantage there. I lose the bishop pair. And white's got more control of the center. Knight to e3. Okay. Now h5. Just hit that knight. Why not? He has no place to go now except back to h2 or f2. Neither one looks very glorious. Okay. Yeah, that's better for sure. h5, knight f2, and then continuing with this plan of getting a rook on c4. Maybe thinking about doubling, keeping an eye on this pawn. All right, well, we both missed. White missed a chance there. I missed another chance to play h5. Queen f5. Bishop takes f1. Okay, yeah, queen f5 would have been better for white here. And then after takes, rook takes, queen d5. Guarding f7. Thinking about playing e6, queen e6 next. And bishop takes here yet again. Rook c6. Okay, getting... The actual threat is rook takes h6, so bishop e3. Now I suppose I could double. Bishop e7. Bishop e7, huh? Seems a strange move. Okay. Queen to e4 after the exchange. Queen d7. Queen c7. Not so good. Wow. What's the difference with queen d7? We don't want to let the queen come to f5 without trading it off? Or rook c4 is also a choice move. Queen takes b7, right? Now queen c7, we're giving up this. h5. This is deep stuff. Just getting a rook to the 7th. Just looks bad for black. I mean, that's too many pawns, and these pawns are all potentially dangerous. The computer likes it better. Alright, he missed a chance here. Knight f6. G takes. Queen g4. King h7 is looking really shaky. Bishop takes f8. Rook takes. E takes f6. Beautiful, because this isn't possible. We want to guard the mate on g3, g7 here, but this isn't possible because of that mate. That's a pretty motif. We're up a rook. But queen takes g2. How is it that white's not just clobbering black here? Now rook to g8. Interesting. Okay. Wow. Doesn't matter which piece, king or queen, he takes with. Now I've got rook to g8 and the queen is pinned. We got a rook ending, of course. Okay, white missed that chance. Queen g6. Rook c4. Yeah, that's maybe better, huh? Going after the more pertinent pawn here. Rook on the 7th isn't always the best. But rook, oh, it's more or less equal. We got our bishop out to check. Now bishop to e7. I suppose that makes some sense. The more pieces we can trade off, the better. These pawns do look very dangerous with that knight's support. If I go here, I think I'm lost. After rook d1. Not quite lost, but under a lot of pressure. Rook e8 is better. Rook f3? What's the point of rook f3? It's a computer move. It seems to make more sense to back up one of these pawns. Now king f7. And you won't be pushing that pawn. Does this not work? Rook d8. Now this check? This looks super scary for white. For black, I mean. King e7. Trouble is, this knight has no way of getting in the game that doesn't obscure the rook, doesn't interfere with the rook. Knight to e5. Can't I just take this? Well, I can. Now knight c6 check is going to pick up the exchange, but at the cost of both of those pawns. Looks like black's a little better here. got the extra pawn. Something like this is met with rook c6, and we're holding on to our extra pawn, even though it's doubled over there. So, always something of interest in these games. So instead of all that, we got a blunder. We got rook takes. A hanging rook on f1. So up to that point, actually, I think quite well played. Found an exchange sacrifice, well played by my opponent, Ali 1956, who found an exchange sacrifice, whether willingly or unwillingly. I think we've all been there. We've all sacrificed the exchange without meaning to and found some compensation for it. Maybe he meant to. Who knows? In any case, hope this has been of some use to someone out there, and stay feisty, folks.